My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. I feel like we've started a lot of videos with this exact shot, which is cutting up an onion. Today we are making a spiced cauliflower soup. This recipe is from Smitten Kitchen. I have become a huge fan of her site. And one of the nice things that people don't always realize about Deb Perlman, who's the writer behind that site and many cookbooks, is that she was vegetarian for a really long time. And so while she's not vegetarian anymore, she has a lot of vegetarian recipes on her website, and they are really solid. They're good. They're not just, we put a bunch of veggies together because we want it to be healthy. They're actually really, really excellent vegetarian recipes. This particular recipe, spicy cauliflower soup, is kind of an Indian flavored soup, and one of my favorite Indian foods is basically potatoes and cauliflower. I think they are an incredible combination, and I've done a whole variety of different things with those two foods over the years. And so when I saw this, I thought, wow, that sounds really great as a soup. I've never done that as a soup. And I happen to have a bag of cauliflower frozen that is from 2021. So it's been in there a while. I unexpectedly had a friend give me some plant starts in the probably May of 2021. And because I'm a plant mama and I love all things plants, I didn't really need them. In fact, I didn't even have room for them, but I also had no idea how to give them away or throw them away. I couldn't bring myself to do that. And so I ended up planting the plants, despite the fact that I didn't need them and already had cauliflower planted. Long story short, the plants did surprisingly well. I often have a really hard time with cauliflower in the spring. It gets too hot too fast and it doesn't form heads. I'll put the link to the variety that I grew. So I think it was just something about her seedlings and the timing, and maybe I stood on one foot and held my tongue in the right place, but I got a surprisingly abundant harvest out of those unexpected cauliflowers that I didn't really need. And then I ended up freezing quite a bit of it. So we are going to make cauliflower soup to clean out that freezer of that cauliflower, because this is part of the January pantry challenge. We are going to be getting rid of things in our pantry, in our freezer, that have been languishing. We're going to come up with ways of using it to feed our families, and we're going to have all of that work that we put in over the summer when we had our big abundant garden. This is when we get the payoff. This is when you get to make meals out of that and not have to do a whole lot of extra work because you've already got most things handy. So yeah, we're going to make cauliflower potato soup. It's going to be glorious. And so I need 1 medium onion. This is a large onion, and so I just use half of it. A medium onion is going to give you about a cup of onion. That's about the translation of that. I get frustrated with things that just say medium or large and don't actually tell you what the amount is, or with things that tell you 2 cups of chopped onion and don't give you an idea of how big the onion is. So I like being able to go back and forth between those two measurements. I need some fresh ginger. And so I'm just peeling the sides off of this ginger that I've had in my freezer for a while. Oops. Whew, that onion has got some fumes. For this ginger, I'm going to use my rasp grater and just go through it this way. This is not the freshest ginger in the world. Generally, I find the older it is, the drier it is, and the harder it is to grate. Sometimes when it's really fresh and juicy, you can just whip right through it using this. But if you just keep rolling it, you eventually get through it all. I find dicing ginger super fiddly. I almost never dice it. I usually either put it through a rasp grater, put it through a ginger grater, or you can buy bottled ginger. There's a company called Ginger People that makes bottled ginger, and it's quite good. And so I will often use that in a pinch because it saves all of this drama. I'm going to hand chop that one little bit there. Ooh, look at all that. And I've said this, I think, every time I've had a rasp grater when I've been filming, but the key to cleaning these is don't let them sit. I'm going to rinse this off right now, because this is going to come off super fast because everything's still moist. If I waited an hour, it's going to dry and it's going to be a giant problem. Done. Super fast. 2 cloves of garlic. This is garlic from my own garden. It's now January, so some of it is not as fresh. Some of it's getting dried out. I still have a ton, so if I have a clove that's not great, I just toss it. Although usually there's something that could be salvaged off of it, but I still have a lot of garlic left over from last year, so I'm good. But this one's looking pretty good. You can see in the middle of this, that green sprout. It's just starting to think about sprouting. There are lots of schools of thought on that. Most of them are that you should take that part out, that it's a little bit bitter, and that you just do that with your fingers and remove it. Honestly, I don't think it's a huge deal if you leave it in, but I always end up picking it out just because it's easy to take out. So this calls for 1 medium potato chopped. I probably have a little bit more than that. I'm just scraping off the parts that are a little bit scabby here. I don't always peel my potatoes. In fact, I usually don't peel my potatoes because there's a lot of nutrition in that skin and I don't mind eating it. Plus it's a lot less fiddly, but it's not unusual to have a few bad spots that need to be removed. That one looks pretty good. You can see this one is just starting to sprout. I don't have great luck with storage on my potatoes. You can see actually I have 3 different kinds here. You can tell by the color. This one is a yellow fleshed potato. It's not a Yukon Gold. I can't remember which one this is. I'll put it up on the screen. This is a white potato called Caribou, and then I actually have no idea what this is. I've completely lost track of my red potatoes and which ones I have, and then I had some that volunteered as well. But mine don't store super long into the winter before they start to sprout. I just, until they get really soggy, I just use them anyway. I take off that sprout and cut them up and use them. It doesn't say how big the chop is on this, so I'm just going to wing it and kind of assume bite-sized pieces. However, I just watched a video by Lazy Dog Farm, I'll link to it below, where he had an expert in potatoes on, and he was kind of asking all kinds of great questions and talking about the myths of certain things regarding potatoes. And I need to go back and watch it again. I was doing something else at the same time, and so I missed some of the key things. But there's some really good advice in there on how to make your potatoes actually store for a longer period of time. And then also things to do to them in the spring when you're getting ready to plant them that will encourage them to start growing a lot faster. And so you get a 2 to 3 week jump on the season because of how you handled them before you put them out to grow. And so that sounded like a really good plan as well. We have late frosts here, and so I can plant my potatoes in early April and they will come up. A lot of times they come up and then they get frosted and they get nipped completely back to the ground and have to start over. And that definitely reduces your yield because you've basically made that plant grow twice. And so you've exhausted a lot of the energy stores that it had. And so oftentimes I don't actually plant my potatoes until late April or early May. Our average last frost date here is sometime around the 1st of May, sometimes as late as May 10th. The rule of thumb is plant your tomatoes on Mother's Day in our neighborhood, although I don't know if I've ever seen it actually frost on past the 10th. I think that the 1st is usually a pretty good date. But I'm looking forward to some of those tips on growing potatoes because some of those tips help them store better, and I always have problems with my potatoes not storing well through the winter. So kind of excited about that. All right, I'm gonna bring you over here to my stove. I imagine you guys have had enough of me with a camera on my head. I know I like it because it's a point of view and you can see exactly what I'm doing. That said, I realize that sometimes it's highly annoying because I'm moving around looking at things or moving quickly, and it like basically makes you nauseous. So I'm going to try to do this video with a tripod just to give everybody a break. This is peanut oil. This is Spectrum peanut oil. It's a good brand. Very nice. If you have any allergy to peanuts, don't use peanut oil. I like it, and then we buy Adams peanut butter, which is the natural peanut butter that has the oil on top that you have to mix back in. My husband eats way more peanut butter than I do, and he doesn't love all that oil. And so instead of mixing it all in, he often pours it off. And so I've gotten him to just pour the extra oil from the Adams into my bottle of peanut oil that's in the kitchen. And so it's worked out quite well. So I only have to buy about 1 bottle of peanut oil a year because I'm kind of constantly re-upping it. So we are going to get our peanut oil going. This recipe calls for fennel seed. I am not going to use fennel. I'm not a fan of fennel. And so as a substitute, I'm going to use mustard seed because mustard seed is also really common in Indian cooking, and I think that'll be a great flavor. And I am going to just substitute that for the fennel in this recipe. And a lot of what we're doing here is we're just trying to flavor that oil. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. This is my biggest burner on my stove, and I have a tendency to overcook things on it. So I like it because it's fast, but there is a trade-off. So I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of whole cumin seed. We do like whole cumin. We love cumin. It's probably our favorite spice to cook with. I buy it basically in 2-cup containers because we use so much of it. We're going to let that sizzle. And then I'm going to just add a 1/4 teaspoon of mustard seed. These are going to pop. And this is kind of like adding garlic. You want to pay attention because you can burn the seeds if you leave them too long. Woo! There they go. Okay. It's like popcorn. Let's stir them down. All right. Throw in our onions. And our potatoes. And her recipe called for 6 ounces of potatoes. If I were to guess, I'm probably in maybe the 10-ounce range. I'm gonna have a few extra in there, but we have a lot of potatoes. I'm kind of looking forward to using them. So, okay, get that stirring so that those seeds are not continue to burn. You don't want them to burn on the bottom. Saute that for 5 minutes. So I'll bring you guys back in a few. Been 5 minutes, give or take. You can see we're getting a little bit of stickage on the bottom. That's actually just going to be flavor, and it's not surprising. Potatoes have a lot of starch, and starch will definitely stick. There are people who actually say one of the best ways to season a cast iron pan is to cook potatoes in a lot of fat, because that potato will basically create kind of a starch layer that helps season it. I don't know if that's really true, but it sounds good. And then the other thing about Indian cooking that you'll often see, it probably depends on the particular region, and I don't know enough about Indian cooking to speak to it with any authority, but you'll often see them really caramelize their onions. That's not unusual to cook onions for about 10 minutes before you start adding other ingredients. This is only 5, so we're doing kind of a quick version of that, but you definitely want a little bit of color on your onions. You don't want them to be just barely translucent. You want some good color in there. All right, we're gonna add, this is our ginger, our garlic. Sorry, I'm right-handed, working from the wrong angle here. And then it called for 1 fresh chili. I happen to have in my freezer some roasted, I think they were Aji Amarillo chilies from year before last that I've been slowly working my way through. They're quite hot, they're delicious, but it's a really nice amount of heat. And so since I have those in my freezer, again, pantry challenge, trying to use things up, it's a perfect marriage. So I just threw one of those chopped up in here. It's gonna give it a nice little bit of heat. I'm gonna turn that down a little bit more. So you wanna cook the onion, the garlic, the chili, until you start to smell it, about a minute. But you wanna get some good roasty toasty on there, but not too long. You don't wanna burn it or it starts to get bitter. I'm gonna trim this as low as it will go. We're gonna add all the rest of our spices. 2 teaspoons coriander. Coriander is just the seed of cilantro. And so I have been harvesting my own coriander for many, many years. And then I just grind it in a spice mill. So that's really nice and fresh. It has a lovely kind of citrusy spice flavor to it. It's really great. Love fresh coriander. A teaspoon of ground cumin, and I also grind my own cumin. If you toast it on a toaster oven tray and then grind it yourself, it has a beautiful flavor. We want a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, and this gives everything that distinctive yellow color. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne. And this cayenne is also from my garden. So it's kind of fun that at least 2 out of the 4 spices that are going in there I actually grew myself. I love that. And what we're doing right now is called blooming the spices, where you get a little bit of heat on them before you start to add liquid. And that is just gonna wake up all of those volatile oils that are in there and really increase your layers of flavor. Now we need to add cauliflower, and this recipe calls for about 3.5 cups. I am just gonna use what's in this bag because I really wanna use it up. When you freeze cauliflower, you blanch it first. So you put it in boiling water and cook it for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then you freeze it, and that stops any enzymatic reactions so that it holds better. It would last a lot longer if I actually used my food saver bags to freeze this instead of just throwing it into a freezer bag. It's so lumpy bumpy that it's very hard to get all of the air out of the bag when you put it in a freezer bag. All that air in that bag over time contributes to it losing a lot of its flavor. So not the best choice, but it's also very fast. Usually when I'm freezing something like cauliflower, it's because it's staring me in the face. It's been sitting, in my refrigerator for too long and it's about to go off, and I really just need to get it in a freezer. And so I'm not thinking about food saver bags. I'm thinking about, I just need to save this. And so it's not always the best method, but it works. But this looks reasonable, and I know this looks like broccoli. It is a cauliflower. The particular variety was a green variety of cauliflower. But, considering the fact that this was frozen, I don't have a date, but I would guess, maybe July or August of 2021. So this is 1.5 years old. It looks pretty good. It's not gonna be terrible. We're gonna be all right. So I've got the cauliflower in there. I also need to add tomato. And she's got 1.5 cups of canned chopped tomatoes. Technically, this is a pint, which is 2 cups, but we're not going to worry about that little bit of difference. And then we're definitely going to need some salt in this. I haven't added any salt. And the tomato, this particular batch of tomatoes, I forgot to add the salt when I was canning it. So we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of table salt. In this case, it's sea salt. And then we're going to add 3 cups of water to this. I'm going to give everything a bit of a stir here. I'm still trying to get that cauliflower to break up. And all of that sticky fond that we had on the bottom is just immediately releasing with this liquid. So not a problem in terms of that stickage that we had happening earlier. And 3 cups of water. We're gonna bring this up to a boil and then simmer it for 25 minutes. So I'll bring you back in a few. All right, our soup has been cooking here for 30 minutes or so. Everything should be pretty tender. I am gonna throw a stick blender in this, and I'm not gonna make it a puree. I just want to make it more creamy. So I'm just gonna buzz up some of this stuff that's in here so that it's a little bit more broken down, but I'm still gonna leave some chunks. There we go. That looks pretty good. And on this recipe on the website, she did mention that originally it called for 4 cups of water, and a lot of people thought that was too much liquid. And so she reduced it to 3 and said, add more if you want. So you can leave this more as a stew, or you can add another cup of liquid and make it more of an actual soup. I tend to like my soups quite thick, so I'm just gonna leave this as it is. Give this a quick taste for seasoning and see if we have enough salt in there. Maybe just a pinch more, especially because that canned tomato that I put in here didn't have any salt. So I'm probably adding maybe another 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm actually grabbing from the kosher salt, so even less. Remember, salt, acid, fat, heat. Is it salty enough? Is it acidic enough? Is it rich enough? Does it have a little punch? Yeah, that's better. All right, to serve this up, we're just gonna dish it up. And we're gonna throw a little bit of Greek yogurt on top. And it's gonna be delicious. And her recipe has this served over white rice. We're kind of lightening up a little bit in lieu of coming off of the holidays, so I really don't think I need to add rice to this. You could certainly serve it that way. I'm just gonna put a couple of tablespoons of Greek yogurt on this and a nice squeeze of lime. And we're just gonna call that good. So there you have it, Smitten Kitchen's spiced cauliflower soup. Really nice start to our pantry challenge. I'm using up homegrown potatoes, garlic, onion, canned tomatoes, a green chili, the coriander, cayenne pepper, and the cauliflower florets are all from my own garden. So pretty great homestead meal. Comes together pretty quickly, and really nice nutrition and not a whole lot of calories, which, trust me, beginning of January, that's definitely what we can use right now. You could serve this over rice or not. You could also throw in some cilantro. You could serve it with naan, which would be fabulous. And if I'd had more time today, I would have tried some homemade naan to go with this. But honestly, I can do without those extra calories as well. So there you have it, tribe. Give it a try. It's a great, easy homestead meal from hopefully pantry staples that you already have in your pantry and in your freezer. And we'll see you next time. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe. And we have new content coming out every week.